Hello again, Madison College, Cisco 1 and 2. It's Chris, and we're going to be going through another couple of examples of subnetting. Here we have the next level up in terms of complexity. We've got a /21 mask. That's less than 24, so that means we're subnetting below the 4th octet. We're subnetting somewhere in the 3rd octet. And we have these host assignments that we have to accommodate: a 500, a 400, a 300 and a 200 number of hosts. So let's see how we can split that apart. We first of all have to look at our area down here on the bottom right of my worksheet. When we were looking at subnetting in the 4th octet, it was breaking down the 256 available addresses into subnet masks and their associated number of supporting addresses within the subnet that we could break that last octet set of data down into. What we're doing now is figuring out how many chunks of 256, which represents all of the possible values in the last octet, how many chunks of those do we need to accommodate the number of hosts we want in this example. So just refreshing our memory again: 500, 400, 300, 200. So what do we have to do? Well, to accommodate 500 addresses, we need to use 2 lots of 256, and that's a /23 mask. For 400 the same, 300 the same, and 200 we can do with the /24 mask. So that's pretty cool. All we have to do for the 500, 400, 300 hosts is use a /23 mask. So what does that tell us in terms of what network mask value we create? So I know the subnet mask last octet has to be 0. None of those are in the network number. And a /23 means that I'm using 1 bit of the 3rd octet in the host range. So the subnet mask for 512 addresses, as we actually know there's a network and a broadcast, so it's 510 usable hosts. The subnet mask is 255.255.254.0. We take 254 in the 3rd octet because we want to be able to use that last bit over here in the 3rd octet to give us 2 lots of 256 addresses, which would be in the last octet. So bits in the host portion, that is 9 bits. And I'm going to use that setup for the R1 gig 00, R1 gig 01, and the R2 gig 01. So let's put that in. R1 gig 00, R1 gig 01, and R2 gig 01. That's all pretty much the same stuff here. So I've got 9 bits in the host portion, subnet mask, we'll just drag it down, and the same here. Same information for each of these ones. The last one, we have to sort out a value for the subnet mask to do 200. That's nice and easy. with the usable hosts of 254 with a subnet mask of 255.255.255.0. Bits in the host portion are 8, and this is R2 gig 0, 0. Great. Now then, let's get to the meat of this problem. We've got to assign network addresses, identify what our first, last host address will be, and the broadcast number. So let's go back to our diagram. Our address range starts at 192.168.160.0. We know that from what is given, so let's put that in. My very first network address is 192.168.160.0. Now, the biggest subnetwork I assign has to support up to 500 hosts. So that tells me I've got a 255, 255, 254 subnet mask. And that's using 1 bit in the third octet, which means I have 0 or 1 as the possible values for that last bit. So that means I have possibility of 2 essentially values before I get to the next network number using the third octet. So let's look at what that means. My network address starts at 192.168.160.0. I have a /23 mask that I'm using. I am going to go up to 192.168.1.255 as the broadcast address. Now, why is that? Well, starting at 192.168.160.0, I have basically got 2 lots of 256 host addresses in my subnetwork range. So that tells me I have 192.168.160.0 and 192.168.161.0 as my 2 lots of 256 addresses that I can use in this subnet mask. So the first host will be 192.168.160.1. My last host will be 192.168. There was a mistake here, sorry about that. Should be 161. 161.254. Okay, cool. So with a /23 mask, I know that I'm using 1 bit in the third octet. With 1 bit, I have the possibility of 2 values. That tells me I'm using 2 lots of 256 possible numbers from the 4th octet. So my range goes from 192.168.160.0 all the way up to 192.168.161.255. If I was to continue to write this down for all the networks that I could use with this subnet mask, the next range would be 192.168.162.0. The next address after that will be 192.168.164.0, and we'll go up in values of 2 in the third octet. You should be linking that now in your mind with the fact that I'm using a 23 mask, which means I'm using 1 bit of the 3rd octet. With 1 bit of the 3rd octet, I can have 2 possible values. Therefore, my networks start every 2 numbers, starting at 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, etc. Okay, so I know the first 3 networks I have to assign have to be in this range here, in the 510 usable address range, which is, as we saw, this guy here. So let's just write those in. Makes it simple. 192.168.162.0 is the network address. The next one after that is 192.168.164.0. Pretty cool. Now then, with line 14, I can see that my broadcast address is going to be 192.168.163.255. That's the last number before I start my new network. So I should be able to easily fill in my first and last host, 192.168.160.1 as the first, and the last 192.168.163.254. Very good. Let's fill those in for the 3rd subnet. I know that my next subnetwork address will start with 166 in the 3rd octet. So I now got 192.168.165.255. This makes it easy to fill out the first and the last host, 192.168.164.1 and 192.168.165.254. There we have it. Okay, the last one, we just have to assign the simpler case of a /24, which is a subnet mask of 255.255.255.0. So this tells me my next network starts at 192.168.166.0. The broadcast address is the natural and simple one, 192.168.166.255, and I can fill in my first and last host pretty easily. 192.168.166.1, and the last host is 192.168.166.254. Pretty straightforward. And that tells us where we can address host and router interface values for each of these interfaces. Okay, that was with the /21. What do we got next? We have just a /23. All right, let's go through and work this one out. Let's just clear out the values. And get started. I have to assign 2 hosts ranges to support 100 hosts, 100 hosts, 50 and 25. Okay. Well, as always, start off with the biggest ones first, and let's figure out what net mask that has to be. If I need to support 100 hosts, this here is my answer. I have to provide a subnetwork that allows me to address up to 128, and that tells me that I have a subnet mask value of 128 in the 4th octet. So let's write in our values here. For a /25 mask, I have 128 numbers and 126 usable addresses. My subnet mask is 255.255.255.128. That is taken from this information here, because basically I am taking this 1 bit here and using that in my network calculation, leaving 7 bits for hosts. So 7 bits here, and I'm going to apply this to R2, both gig 01 and gig 00. Okay, I can just drag those down and we're good. Okay, let's take my look at the next set of numbers that I need to support. I need to support the next biggest, which is a 50. Now, if I've got to support 50, that tells me I need a 192 mask, and that's 6 bits in the host portion. So that's 64 numbers, 62 hosts in the network, and a subnet mask of 255.255.255.192. I see that just dragging it down didn't copy it, thought that I was trying to increment, so we'll put a stop to that straight away. 6 bits in the host, and I'm going to assign that to R1 gig 00. The last one is 25 hosts on the gig 01. "25 hosts, well, that means I have to have a 224 mask because I fit into the 32 maximum hosts. That's a 224 mask. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bits in the host portion. So there we have 5 bits. We have 32 possible numbers, therefore 30 usable hosts with a range of 255.255.255.224. Okay, we have the first section complete. Let's now work out for each of these interfaces what is the network address, the first host, last host, and the broadcast. With this example, you should notice that even though we're subnetting in the 3rd octet in terms of the overall space, the way we're carving out the address ranges are all subnetting within the 4th octet, which makes it maybe a little bit easier. So let's get back and do that. The network address from our given information starts at 192.168.160.0 with a subnet mask applied of 255.255.255.128. That basically means I'm splitting the 4th octet in half. My broadcast address will be 192.168.160.127, and my next network will start at 192.168.160.127. 192.168.160.128. Okay, should be easy to fill in these first and last hosts now. 192.168.160.1. The last host is one less than the broadcast address, 192.168.160.126. Cool. Now, in my next largest interface that I have to assign, that's also a .128 mask. So let's use the second half of that range available to us and put in the broadcast address 192.168.160.255. That gives me my first host of 192.168.160.129 and the last usable host address of 192.168.160.254. So you should be able to see that by using this 128 mask, the /25, I'm basically splitting the hosts in that last octet in half and assigning the first half to this range in the 160.0 and the second half to this second range in the 160.128 subnet. Cool. Okay, so I've used one of the two /24s in my /23 space. So I'm going to get started again my second half, which is 192.168.161.0. Now, what subnet mask do I have to apply? I've got to get 62 usable host addresses, and that tells me I'm using a 192 mask over here. There we are. Okay, 192.168.161.1 will be my first host. Let's try and figure out what my broadcast address will be. Okay, with a 192 mask, that tells me I have a new network number every 64 numbers. So let's put that in here. We've got 192.168.161.64 will be the beginning of my next network number. With that mask, I get a new set of network numbers every 64. So that tells me my broadcast address up here is going to be 192.168.161.63. And my last usable host will be 192.168.161.62. Cool, so we are nearly done now. Let's look at the last one we have to work with. We've got to work with an assignment of up to 30 usable hosts. That places me here, /27, with a 224 mask. So that tells me I'm going to get a new network number every 32 numbers. So that means my next network would start at 192.168.161.96. So pretty simply, I have my broadcast address over here, 192.168.161.95. So my last host is 192.168.161.94, and my first host is 192.168.161.65. And there we have it. That is a couple more examples. If you want more, let me know via Slack or email and we'll get them covered. So other than that, please just try a few more examples yourself, and the penny will drop once, you'll lose it, it'll drop twice, and then probably the third time you'll never have to go back and think about it again. It'll be somewhat automatic.